We have never accepted slavery.
We have been black, powerless people for 400 years.
We know that this flag is drenched with our blood.
All of this is on account of we want to register to become first-class citizens. And if the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America.
I'm thinking about what you gonna do for my people in December. And we got to let people know how we feel.
We are human beings, and we are not stopping now till we get something that's better.
Come here, let me talk to you about this courageous, resilient, beautiful, powerful, loving mother, friend, activist, all-around badass black woman that is Fannie Lou Hamer. Sit down. So back in the 1960s in Mississippi, Miss Fannie Lou Hamer was attending a local church meeting where she found out that black people were given the right to vote by the Constitution. So imagine her surprise not knowing that back in 1868, that's when it was ratified into law that they were given the right to vote, all U.S. citizens, including former slaves. And now here it is in 1960s, and she's just finding this out. Oh, America. Of course, she was excited about it, so she wanted to tell everybody in Mississippi that looked like her and people that was poor and didn't have the knowledge what was going on. But back then, Mississippi, being one of the most racist places, that made it extremely hard for black people to even register to vote. They had poll taxes, they had literacy tests, they were in constant acts of violence and terrorizing them to keep them away from the voting booth. So on August 31st, 1962, she and 17 other black activists decided to take that drive from Louisville, Mississippi, 26 miles to Indianola, Mississippi, to cast their vote. Now, out of the 18, when they got there, only 2 were allowed to do the literacy test. Like I told you, Mississippi made it hard for black people to vote. So on their way back, they would stop somewhere by some state highway patrolmen that basically told them that they had to go back to Indianola because they had to pay a fine because the bus driver was driving a bus while black, basically. So when they end up getting back to Louisville, she was met by her husband and her children, basically telling her that the plantation owner that she worked on the plantation for 18 years as a sharecropper and timekeeper, he was telling her basically if she don't go and take her name off that ballot, or if she gonna renege her literacy test, that she couldn't stay on that plantation and work.
I had worked as a timekeeper and sharecropper for 18 years. I was met there by my children that told me the plantation owner was angry because I had gone down, tried to register. After they told me, my husband came and said the plantation owner was raising Cain because I had tried to register. And before he quit talking, the plantation owner came and said, Fannie Lou, do you know, did Pap tell you what I said? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I mean that if you don't go down and withdraw your registration, you will have to leave. That then if you go down and withdraw, that you still might have to go because we're not ready for that in Mississippi.
But Miss Fannie Lou Hamer was not deterred, baby. She was not about to let you stand in the way of her rights and the rights that other black people around her didn't even know about. It didn't take long for the violent acts to start to occur.
I had to leave that same night. On the 10th of September, 1962, 16 bullets were fired into the home of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Tucker for me. That same night, 2 girls were shot in Louisville, Mississippi. Also, Mr. Joe McDonald's house was shot in.
Like, they were doing all of this because black people dared to be a citizen. But that still did not stop her. June 9, 1963, she and other activists was heading home to Mississippi from attending a voter registration workshop. They stopped at a restaurant, kind of like gas station, to get some food as well as use the restroom. 4 of the individuals got off the bus to go into the restaurant, and she said that she heard that there was commotion, found out that they were end up getting kicked out of the restaurant, and it was by the sheriff of the town. So when Fannie Lou Hamer wanted to get off to see what was going on, she said that she noticed what was happening, and then one of the officers basically was like, grab her. He got her, kicked her, put her in the car, and took her to jail. Fair warning, I'm going to be giving a description what took place next as far as when she got arrested.
And I was put in a cell with Miss Yvesta Simpson. And after I was put in this cell, I could just hear some horrible screams, and I would hear somebody when they say, "Can't you say yes, sir, nigger? Can't you say yes, sir?" And they would call her names that I wouldn't want to go on tape. And she said, "Yes, I can say yes, sir." So I said, and she said, "I don't know you well enough." And I would hear when she would hit the floor again. And finally she began to pray, and she asked God to have mercy on these people because they didn't know what they was doing. And after a while, they passed my cell door with this young woman, Miss Annelle Ponder, and one of her eyes looked like blood, and her hair was standing up on her head, and her clothes had been torn. And then 3 white men came to my cell, and one of them was a state highway patrolman, and he asked me where I was from, and I told him I was from Rouville, and I guess he called Rouville, and they didn't like me in Rouville because I worked with voter registration there. And when he came back, he said, "You damn right. You said you're from Rouville, all right, and we gonna make you wish you was dead." And they led me out of that cell into another cell, and he gave a Negro prisoner a blackjack, and he ordered me to lay down on a bunk bed. And a Negro prisoner said, "Do you want me to beat her with this, sir?" And he said, "You're damn right, because if you don't, you know what I'll do for you." And I laid down on the bunk like he ordered me to do. And the first Negro beat me. He beat me until he was exhausted. And after he beat, the state highway patrolman ordered the second Negro to take the blackjack. And during the time he was beating, I began to work my feet because that was a horrible experience. And the state highway patrolman ordered the first Negro that had beat to sit on my feet while the second one beat. And I just began to scream where I couldn't control it. And then the white man got up and began to beat me in the head. I have a blood clot now in the artery to the left eye and a permanent kidney injury on the right side from that beating.
It was a extremely hateful situation that this was in, that she was in, and all of them was in. And after they beat her, she said that she overheard them saying that they was going to throw their bodies into the Big Black River. They didn't do it, and she believed they didn't do it because there was already heat on Mississippi at the time, because earlier that Sunday or earlier that day, Medgar Evers had been killed. So if a group of activists decide, or if they decide to kill off a group of activists, then of course Mississippi will be under fire, as they should have been. But she ended up leaving out of that situation. And this is where we get to the Freedom Summer, baby. So during the Freedom Summer of 1964, Miss Fannie Lou Hamer was able to give her testimony before the Credentials Committee as a representative of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, because of course they wanted people who look like them to have those seats and have those voices. But as Miss Fannie Lou Hamer began to give her presentation, let me tell you what this Kalashmi bad body ass president decided to do. He interrupted her.
But now we switch to the White House and NBC's Robert Goralski.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
On this day, 9 months ago.
He did it knowing that they would break away, thinking he might announce who his choice of vice president was going to be. Instead, he gets up there and he announces, get this, he announces that it's 9 months to the day since Governor Connolly, who was there, was shot along with President Kennedy. So he announced a 9-month anniversary. Everybody's scratching their heads.
Thank you very much.
And then he leaves. And by that time, Fannie Lou Hamer's testimony was over.
Oh, but let me tell you how it's always a ram in the bush, because word got around that they cut off Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, so the stations decided to broadcast her that night continuously, so that all across America, they heard her story. They heard of how she was terrorized when she and other black activists went to go vote in Mississippi. She talked about the people who were shot, who were killed, who were lynched. She talked about how they beat her so bad in that prison. She left with kidney problems and a tumor in her head. She had problems. She told the truth about Mississippi, because before this, a lot of people didn't know of the conditions of Mississippi. They didn't know. Only people who knew of what was going on in Mississippi were people who were there. A lot of people were leaving out of Mississippi at the time too. And Miss Fannie Lou Hamer wanted to fight for what she knew and fight for her home and fight for her land. After the world saw this, they could not silence her. She spoke at almost every college that she could at that time. She spoke the truth about the harsh conditions of Mississippi, and it rocked the nation. She marched and spoke with Martin Luther King Jr., with Malcolm X, who actually named her America's #1 freedom fighting woman, baby. They didn't even like to follow up behind her, because when she spoke with so much passion and so much truth and so much realness that you had no other choice but to be captured by her essence. She became so popular that Harry Belafonte had funded her and her delegates a trip to Africa so that they could sit down and talk to the president and talk about strategies and how they can make Mississippi better, basically, what they can do to make America better. She was invited on TV shows with scholars, and she held her own. She did not let anybody intimidate her. Uneducated, yet so powerful. Even through all her fight, the system still failed her. She ended up having life-changing injuries due to her beating that they gave her in Winona, Mississippi. Years later, she ended up having to go to get a tumor removed, and they gave her a hysterectomy without her permission. Again, the sterilization of Black women. Throughout all of that, she continued to rise. She was fearless, and she was just in her crusade. She was an important part of getting the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965. Miss Fannie Lou Hamer fought. She cared, she broke down barriers, and she did it in the name of Mississippi. We should all be grateful for this courageous, powerful, and resilient Black woman that is Fannie Lou Hamer. Have a good one.
1964, we didn't have many people registered in the Mississippi, but today we have 60% of the Black population registered in Mississippi. We have 42 elected officials in the state